Hello, my name's Emma and I work for Empower Development, and we are a training company specialising in insurance training across the market. We do courses like this, so to help you prepare for your CII exams and help you prepare for your coursework. And we also do topic specific courses as well. So for example, we do IF1, what you need to know, LM1, what you need to know, where I attempt to cover the whole book in an hour. Doesn't always work. Usually I struggle with that one, but we have those as well. So a little bit about us. We also have a CII revision platform where we like to describe it as like BBC bite size, but for insurance. So we've sort of brought the book to life a little bit with some animations and videos, and I can give you all free access to that for the weekend. So while I'm doing my presentation, you guys can pop in the comments your full name and your email address and what module it is that you're studying, and I can give you access to that. So for example, for UK, you failed on Saturday. Oh, I'm sorry about that, Kate. If you give us what module it was, we can give you free access to one of our courses for the weekend, just to maybe help you with that revision. And hopefully this will give you that extra push that you need to rebook your exams. So I will get cracking. Okay. So my name's Emma. I've worked in the insurance market for a really, really long time, about 17 years. I will admit that. I come from a broking background, commercial broking background, and you could probably tell I am from Manchester. So welcome if you're from Manchester and you're here following an email from the Institute. Hello, neighbour. Today's session is about preparing for multiple choice exams. And we're going to look at the steps to take to prepare for your exam. Now, everyone approaches their exams in a different way. And we will look at sort of how you can keep it interesting, how you can keep your revision interesting and fresh, and keep yourself engaged in the content, which in turn will sort of help you with your memory. We'll look at what you should be doing the day before your exam. What do you need to consider at that final hurdle? So not only what do I need to do for my study, but what do I need to do in respect of going to my exam as well. We'll have a chat about revision mate, make sure that you understand sort of what the questions are going to look like, where to find mock papers, and if you've done an exam before, then you'll probably know a little bit of this information, but it's just a bit of an outline, just in case you've not done one before, because the CII sort of hide some information. It's quite difficult to find, so I just want to sort of point that out to you. Now, I asked everybody, when is your exam? So we've got Craig, who is on the 17th. We've got Kate, who's looking at rebooking. So let me know if you've got one coming up, or when do you think that you're going to do it? Because the first thing that I would urge you to do is book your exam. As soon as you get off this webinar, have a look at your calendar and go and book that exam, because having that date to work towards can help you stay focused. It helps stop any procrastination, because you've got a date that you're working towards. You know you've got to do it by then. You've got to be ready. And the one of the top questions that I always get asked is, how long should I give myself to study the book? And it is sort of how long's a piece of string, because first of all, it depends on what book you've got. If you've got IF1, it might take you a little bit longer because it's quite a big book. Whereas if you've got maybe IF3, it's a little bit shorter. But maybe, 6 to 8 weeks, so a couple of months should be enough for you to work your way through that book. And another question I get asked quite a lot is, do I need to read it? Will your course be enough? I have to say, you should always read the book at least once, because the questions that the CII are going to ask you are going to be very specific to that book. They may even go as far as to pick out sentences from the book and test you on those little areas that you might not have really thought about, that you might have skimmed. So I would always read the book in full at least once. If you're on our revision app, if you want access to our revision app, please put your name and your email address and the module in the chat, and I'll do that for you this afternoon. You can work through the videos on there as well, so you can read a bit of the book and then watch some of the videos. But if you try and keep that revision to like a shorter time frame, you can keep the momentum going. You do tend to lose that momentum if you keep it dragging on for months. Now, of course, whatever's going on in your life will, that will depend on how quickly you do it, but it's just keeping that momentum going, which is the main thing, really. Okay. So we call this the revision funnel, and it's how we like to say to approach CII revision. So let me know in the chat what your sort of approach is to revision. What do you do? Okay, thanks guys. I can see all your comments coming in. Just make sure those are on the screen. So what's your preferred type of revision? What do you do? What's your plan? Now, I mentioned that textbook, if we start at the top, it's very important. We have to read it at least once cover to cover, even if you're on one of our courses, okay? One of the things I will point out as well is, don't skip the introductions. These introduce the information. It is a common thing for people to do, is to skip those introductions, but make sure you read them. Now, the next is your notes. Now, this is really important and really helps with revision. If you can explain those concepts in the book in your own words, that's evidence that you've developed a deep understanding of that topic. And if you can't describe those topics in a simple manner, then you probably need to go back and have a look over them again. So with your notes, highlight key points, highlight, the book's yours, get your highlighter out and write all over it if you want. It's your book, do what you want with it. Reword some of the content into your own words. That's going to help you understand it and help you memorize it. I like repetition, so I will read something, write it down, read it, write it, read it, write it, and that's how I remember. So getting that whole book down to some important areas or some key facts which are easily revisable is really important. Okay. Next, we've got revision cards. Now we sell revision cards on our website. If you go to empowerdevelopment.co.uk, there's a banner across the top. Some of our revision cards you can pick up for just £3, which is just the postage. So we've made them for you. However, I used to make them myself. You can make them at home on your own. You can buy sort of revision cards off Amazon and write on them yourself. Now, when you get to the revision cards point in your study, this is where you have now learnt the fundamentals, and it's time to test yourself on all of those important concepts. So it could be, if you're going to make your own revision cards, at the beginning of the book, they give you like a table of all the key words that they're going to cover, key concepts that they're going to cover in that chapter. Use those as you're planning your revision cards, you can write down that word and then put a description on the back. So when you're going through them, you see if you remember those concepts. So as you start progressing, the revision cards that you know, you put to one side and you just keep the ones that you don't know, because they're the ones that, you know, you need to concentrate on. Okay. And actually, I find the process of going into the book and finding that information to put on the revision cards is actually really good revision within itself, because you have the concept and then you have to go and find out what it means to write it on the back of the revision card. So that in itself is a really good exercise to do. Just like writing questions, I used to write a lot of my own questions, to make them up myself, because you have to go and find the information and then you have to understand what the correct answer is and find wrong answers to put in as well. So writing your own questions can really help with that revision process. Talking about questions, people love questions. People are always asking us for more questions. I spend a lot of time writing questions for our CII courses. So questions are really important for you to figure out what you don't know. Because remember, that is all that questions are telling you, what you don't know. So I would start early on with the questions, read the first chapter, do some practice questions on that first chapter, and highlight those problem areas where you may have got things wrong. That will then give you a bit of a revision plan, so you know that you need to focus on those specific areas. Because you might be struggling in not all of the areas. You don't want to keep going over stuff that you already know. This is where you're really narrowing it down. People always ask me, where can I find more questions? So typically with your CII module, if it's insurance, you get Revision Mate. So you get practice questions for each chapter. And then you also get a mock paper. However, that's usually it. I don't find that the question bank on Revision Mate is very big. You do start seeing a little bit of repetition, and you start remembering questions. Instead of knowing what the answer is, you just remember which one you got wrong last time. And this can be a bit of a problem. So we do have extra question sets that we sell. We've got revision cards and extra practice questions as well. If you're on one of our courses, when you see it this weekend, you'll see we've got extra questions in there as well. And there's plenty of places online where you can purchase extra papers. If you're doing an apprenticeship program, I'd urge you to speak to your coach. They may also be able to provide you with some practice papers. They might not be up to date, so just be careful with that. They might not be the most recent ones. However, it's going to give you a good understanding of the way that the CII word their questions and the type of language that they use, which is sometimes part of the battle with the questions. Next, we have checklists. So at the end of each chapter in your book, you'll probably see on the last couple of pages of the chapter, you have a key points section. So you want to make sure that you know every single one of those points. So pick out the key concepts. Can you explain them in simple terms? If you can't explain something in simple terms, you don't know it well enough. And what I'd like to do as well is go all the way to the back of the book and you've got your index. So A to Z index, and just go through every single word from A to Z and pick out each word and then explain what it is in simple terms. And if you can't do it, highlight it and you know to go back to that area. So that's called an index test. That's a pretty good thing to do, maybe like the day before your exam. It's a little bit more of a last minute, right, what do I definitely not know before my exam, rather than part of your revision plans. You're going to go back to the questions again. By this point here, you've probably narrowed down what you don't know. So it could be, I'm a bit rusty on Lloyd's in chapter 2, and also this regulation part in chapter 9, or whatever it is. So you will have narrowed down where you're struggling, and you can focus on those areas and complete questions. So take where you went wrong on the last questions and just focus on those areas. Don't waste time on areas that you know really well. I'd do another round of revision cards. Remember to put aside the ones that you absolutely know. I know it feels really good when you get them right, but you know that, so get rid of them. Concentrate on the ones that you definitely don't know, and it'll feel even better when you get those ones right. Concentrate on the ones you've not quite got yet. And then the last part is our luggage stuffing. So you might think, what the hell is she talking about now? So luggage stuffing is that final bit before your exam, where you're trying to remember things that you probably struggle to remember for the whole of your revision. And we all have probably those niggly things that we think, why can't I remember that? I always forget that. And this is where you want to do your luggage stuffing. Those are the bits that you want to do your luggage stuffing with. So your luggage stuffing stage is probably the morning of your exam, the night before, if it's early in the morning, or even sat in the waiting room. I like to do my exams in person, so my luggage stuffing gets done in the waiting room. So there's always a concept or a thing or a case law or something that I just can't remember. So I luggage stuff that in the waiting room. So I get it in front of me and I read it and I just stuff it in. I read it over and over and over again. And then as soon as I go into my exam, I'll get my scrap paper and I'll write it down straight away because it's still so fresh in my memory, and I just jot it down. Scrap paper's there to use. You're not doing anything wrong. You can just write a note down, and then if it comes up in the exam, brilliant, you've got it written down. If it doesn't, it doesn't, because we don't know, do we, if it is or it isn't. So that's luggage stuffing, where you're stuffing in those little bits that you're just not quite happy with, that you know that you don't quite know properly or 100%. So this is things like statutes, acronyms, all of those types of things. Okay. Just jot that down as soon as you get into the exam centre. Okay. Okay. Now, let's clear all that. Revision techniques, everyone has like a different way of doing it, but we're going to talk like more on a scientific basis, what has been proven to work over time. Now, this Pomodoro technique creates a more productive way to study, to keep you engaged and to keep you focused. So it uses a timer to break down your study into intervals. So just have a drink. So we start, first of all, with deciding on what tasks you're going to do. So that's really important. Today, I am going to study the insurance market. That's the topic I'm going to tackle today. And sometimes it's not feasible to be like, I'm going to do chapters 1, 2, and 3 today. If that's not going to be feasible, if you think there's no way I'm going to do that, but I've got to, you're not going to do it. So just take it small bits at a time, things that you know are going to be achievable, even if it's just section A from chapter 1. I've not got very long. I know I'm probably only going to do that bit, but it's better than nothing, right? So just do what is achievable for you. So decide on the task. Okay, my task today is I'm going to do sections A, B and C from chapter 1 today. Set your timer for 25 minutes and then work on that task for 25 minutes. Studying sections A, B and C in chapter 1 for 25 minutes. And then you're going to take a 5-minute break. And then you're going to do that 4 or 5 times, whatever works best for you. And then you'll take a longer break. And it's just been proven that breaking it up that little bit more will help your productivity and keep you more focused and engaged. Because we say this to ourselves, don't we, that I'm going to study all day today, all day. What are the chances you're going to sit there on your phone for the majority of that time? Because it just feels so unachievable. And the chances of you actually sitting there and doing it all day is quite slim. So it's better just to take it a little chunk at a time. And if you do it this way, try it. Might not work for you, that's fine. Give it a go. Chances are you might get through more than you imagine you would. Okay. Now, there is a theory that I've not tried out yet, but I read about it, where they tested 2 groups of people doing revision. So one group of people were revising the morning of their exam before they went to their exam, and then the other group of people revised the same information before they went to sleep and then went to their exam. And the people who read the information before they went to sleep retained more of it than the other people who did it on the day, which was fascinating for me because I would never do that. I'd be like, it's too late. I don't do anything past 7 o'clock because it's too late. I go to bed really early. So why would I start revising before I go to sleep? But apparently it works. I don't know. Give it a go. Let me know if it works because I've not tried it. But the day before your exam is pretty important, okay? So if you've got a full day before your exam, in the morning, do that final past paper. So that final past paper is going to, remember, don't worry about passing that because all it's doing is telling you what you don't know. Okay, I always say this about mock papers. People get very obsessed with passing them when really all it's telling you is what you don't know, right? And what's important is what you do with that information. Just like failing an exam. It doesn't matter that you failed that exam, you know, nothing's gone wrong, it's fine. What's important now is what you do with that information. So you look at your results, where did I go wrong? And then go away and study those areas. That's really valuable information for you, for a fail of a mock, for a fail of an exam. That information is really valuable and it's really going to help you moving forward. Morning of your exam, doing that index test again, like I mentioned before, going through all of those words, making sure you know them all. And then if you know there's a problem area, we all typically know what our problem areas are in modules. Tackle those, do some last revision on those, talk to people. You know, if you've got colleagues or friends or family who might know a little bit more about it than you, talk to them about it. They might have a better way of explaining it than the book does. So utilise that. The afternoon of the day before, gather all your things together that you're going to need. You don't want to be rushing about on the day. Get your ID, any other paperwork that you might need. Check for any updates. So if you go to the unit on the CII website, you can check there for any updates to the course syllabus, just to make sure that all the information you've got is the most up to date. And then finally have one last read through of your own written notes, go through any flashcards that you might have made, any questions you might have written, any key points you might have highlighted. And then in the evening, make sure you know where you're going, especially if you're going to the exam centre in person. If you're doing it remotely, do your familiarization test. So on the CII website, they give you a familiarization test just to make sure that the technology on your laptop is compatible with the PSI systems. Do that the night before, I would say, just to make sure that everything's working and you're not going to have any surprises in the morning. Tidy your room if you've got a remote exam, because they will want to look around your room and make sure there's nothing on the walls, no papers on the desk, and things like that. They're very strict with that. And have a cut-off point. That's really important. Don't go revising till 4 o'clock in the morning. We're not going to achieve anything from that. You know, if you've got some time in the morning before your exam, great, but you know, don't stay up late revising, because chances are you're probably not going to take it in. Okay. Now, this is probably one of the most important parts of your book, but we typically skip over it because we want to get to all the good stuff, right? We want to get to the content, but this is at the front of all books, and it tells you how many questions are in the exam for each learning outcome, which is like gold knowledge. If you can know how many questions are going to come from each topic, you know where to concentrate, right? So it's like with IF1, there's like 2 questions on proximate cause. And I used to see students quite a lot getting themselves tied up with the concept of proximate cause. I just don't get it. I keep getting it wrong. And I'd say it's 2 questions, right? If you can get those 2 questions right, brilliant. It's 2 easy marks. But if you're struggling with it, there's 15 questions on regulation. You need to be over there. You need to be concentrating on that section, not proximate cause. So don't worry about it. Okay, so it's just where you focus your attention. Now, when you look at this in the book, remember that learning outcomes don't always equate to chapters. Sometimes they do, which is brilliant. It works. But you might find that they don't. I don't think they do with MO5, they don't. So just have a look at the beginning of the chapter. It'll tell you what learning outcome it covers. So just make sure you match it up. It's not always straightforward. Okay. Now, it's important to check the important notes for your exam. You can find this in your examination guide. Familiarize yourself with the format. So, for example, it'll tell you the method of assessment. So this exam that we picked here is 55 multiple choice questions and 4 case studies. The 4 case studies have 5 multiple choice questions each. So have a read of that before you go in, because each one might be different. Okay, some exams have case studies, some don't. Some have 100 questions, some have 50. We figure out which is the one that you're doing. 2 hours, so figure out how long you're going to get as well. So this will be in your examination guide. So if you're on one of our online courses, we always provide a summary of what to expect for each course. And that's actually free for anyone to view, because you can view the introduction and the first chapter of all of our courses for free on our website. So you don't have to buy one of our courses to see that, and it'll break down all of these important notes per module. I can show you where to find that at the end if you want me to show you that. Now, if you've got an exam with those case study questions, typically they're at the end of the exam. Some people find those harder. I know we've got some people doing MO5. When I did the MO5 exam, the last few questions were multiple answer. So you had A, B, C, and D, and the answer could be A, B, C, and D, or it could be A and B, it could be A, B, and D. It could be any, you know, you had to pick which ones you felt were relevant. And I found those really tricky, because it wasn't just pick 2. It could be 2, it could be 1, it could be all of them. I found that really hard. So when I did the exam, I went straight to those first because I knew I was going to be spending a lot of time there. So you can skip forward to any case studies or any multiple answer questions that are at the end of the exam. Do it first while you're still fresh, because sometimes by the time you've done the rest of the exam, you're like, oh God, is it over yet? And you've got all of these case study questions to do. So you can do those first. There's nothing saying that you can't do that. Okay. So the CII, they don't tend to change their style of questions. They're usually worded very similar. So the type of wording that you see on Revision Mate is probably going to be similar to your exam. They do tend to keep it the same. Look out for new and fresh topics being added to books. So look out for things like emerging risks. So, I don't know, drones, stuff like that, SMCR, any new regulation. I've put FOS here as well, because if the limitations change for the Financial Ombudsman Service, sure as hell they're going to ask you about that because it's changed. The CII like to ask questions on new things because it's an excuse for them to put a new question in an exam. So they're going to ask you about those new topics. So always look out for those. Cyber, you know, all of these new emerging risks. Okay. Look out as well for lists of information. Now, as someone who writes a lot of CII questions for our courses, I love a list of information because they're really easy to create questions out of. So lists of 3 or 4 items are really easy to make a question out of, like, which of these is not XYZ? Really easy. So if you've got a list of information, make sure you're revising those. Okay. Understanding what the wrong answers are as well. So when you do a mock paper and you see, you know, the wrong answers, why are they wrong? What do they refer to? I think that's always a really useful exercise to do. Look out for negative questions. So you might get in bold, you can see there at the bottom, we've got an example, not, cannot, will typically be in bold and capital letters. And then anything where they want you to pay attention to it is going to be in bold. So I've got an example down there, maximum, minimum, main, most, normally, usually. Now, when I'm teaching the CII qualifications, I see this quite a lot, people getting tied up in questions where they're being asked, which of the following would usually be da 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 da? And the answer could potentially be 2 of them, and the book talks about 2 of them. However, there's one which is more so than the other, if that makes sense. And that's what they're asking you for. Which of the following is usually, or which of the following is the main? So yeah, the answer could be on the cusp of 2 of them. However, there's one that's more prevalent than the other. So really look out for that. And the book will make that quite clear. Making your answers into an acronym can really help. And we use an example here of GAPS to give us the main types of commercial vehicles. So we've got goods carrying vehicles, agricultural and forestry, passenger carrying, and vehicles of special construction. So if you can try and make like an acronym out of something, or maybe like a little bit of word association, things like that, then it can make it just that little bit easier to remember these things when you're getting your exams. On the online course, we do offer some ways to try and remember stuff in the top and tail of the videos. Okay, now we spoke about the index test twice already. I'll go into that again. Just I would recommend doing it. It's really good to do. Mind maps, really good for visual learners. Don't know if anyone's bedroom looked like that when they did their exams. This picture is one of our trainers, Grace. This was her room. So that's a real life picture. So mind maps and posters can really help, especially if it's somewhere that you look at, you know, all the time, maybe bathroom mirror, stuff like that. We spoke about practice questions and revision cards as well. There are revision cards, you can see in the picture at the bottom, which are on our website. Most of them are just £3 now, so you can pick up some of those or make your own. You can make your own as well. Okay, so mock exam. You need to go to your exam guide. Now, this is where you find it on the CII website. I still think that's really hard to find, personally. What I tend to do if I want to find an examination guide is I type into Google IF1 examination guide 2023 and it comes up straight away. That's just me. That's what I do to try and find it. And in the examination guide, it downloads as a PDF document, and you just scroll down just a little bit and there's a full mock paper in there. And I know from talking to a lot of students, they go, oh my God, I didn't know that was in there. Because it doesn't tell you that it's there, but it is. You just have to scroll down a little bit. So make sure that you look at that, because it's a valuable resource for you. Now, when you go in to do your exam, or you might be doing it at home, whatever way you choose to do it, you do have the opportunity to flag items. So you can put a little red flag on any questions that you want to go back to later. So if you answer it and you think, I'm not really sure about that, but I think that's it, you can put a flag on it just to come back to it later on. And there's also a highlight function, which is quite good for case study questions. So you can sort of highlight important points in the question that you want to bring your attention to. I mentioned about rough paper. You are allowed note paper in the exam. You can make notes on there. You just can't take it away with you. You have to keep it in the exam hall and they'll take it off you at the end. Good for luggage stuffing, remember. So if you're trying to remember something, maybe a legislation or a case law, stuff it in the brain and then write it on the rough paper when you get in. Use your time allowance. I remember the first exam that I went to a very long time ago, and everyone was getting up and leaving at different times, and it really panicked me because I was thinking, oh God, should I have finished this by now? What's going on? It took me a while to realise that everyone was doing different exams. I actually saw someone next to me who had a big book, and I was like, I've not got a book. Did I need a book? But they were doing a mortgage advisor exam. So you'll see a few people in the comments have mentioned RO2, RO1. The CII do other courses aside from insurance examinations. So just bear this in mind when you're in the exam. If you're in person, some people might have books, they might have papers with them, they might leave before you, they might already be in there doing their exam. Don't panic about that. You use your time allowance. That's your time that you can use, and just use it all, definitely. And I mentioned this before, if you get tired, tackle case studies first. So if you're feeling you're lagging a little bit and you're only a few questions in, skip to the end and get those case studies or those multiple answer questions done. Reading the question carefully is just such an easy mistake to make, especially on questions like this where all the answers look the same, don't they? They all look very similar, and it's very easy to pick one that could be potentially wrong. So just take your time, read the question really well. There's a lot of words in here which are all similar, so it's just so easy to get it wrong. Even just flag it. If you see a question like this, flag it and just double check it at the end, just to make sure you've definitely got that right. Okay. Okay, so I will stick around for questions, and I'm going to share our socials as well. We pop those on the screen. I'm also going to just show you the platform. So if you want to have a look at that. Our Facebook group, there's about, God, I think there's about 700 of us now in there, from all over the world, CII students. We have a lot of RO1 and RO2 students as well. Paul, and there's another one, Kate as well. We have students doing those exams in that group, and they support each other, which is fantastic. So check that out. Okay. So this is what our course looks like. Anybody can view the first chapter for free. So like I said, we've got the unit structure there, which you can view. Anyone can view that, where it tells you, how many questions have you got, how long have you got, and the updates for each year as well. So where there's been any changes to the book for 2023, we've just rounded that up there in a 7-minute video. And you can see that that each chapter is split up into videos, and some of them are animations which look like this. And we have an audio only version as well. So if you go to the gym or you go out running, you can just listen to it instead of watching it. So if you want access to that, we've got pretty much every course apart. We don't have the RO modules, unfortunately. We just do insurance. But if you join the Facebook group, you can get support from there from other students for those modules. And I can sign you up to have access for this for the weekend. But I will stick around just in case anyone's got any questions. If not, hopefully I'll see you on one of our courses again soon. And good luck in your exam.